So then, guys, it seems like I have done reading the first 6 chapters of Murder on the Orient Express. Therefore, we're going to continue through page 45. We're in chapter 6 of the sponge bag. So, therefore, let's find out more about Hercule Poirot, the Belgian detective. We're willing to solve the entire case, whoever's behind the murder of the passenger. Time to continue before we conclude the whole story in last 2 chapters of Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's time to continue. Then we'll conclude afterwards. Are you ready? Excellent. A small dark man with a high voice, said Bouc, when the conductors and a hard guard, Sumet, had left the carriage. That is the enemy. That wretched described, but where is he now? He didn't leave the train, but he isn't on the train either. Like you, I am very confused, said Poirot. In this situation, it is always best to return to the facts that we can be sure about. Fact 1. Rachel or Cassidy was murdered in his bed last night with 12 knife wounds in the chest. Fact 2. His watch had stopped at 1:15, so that gives us a definite time for the crime, said Bouc. Not necessarily, said the detective. It is possible that the murder happened earlier or later for that time, and that the murderer has left us the watch as a false clue. There is also an information from Dr. Christatine that at least 2 of the wounds were made some time after Rachel was already dead. And what about the man in the conductor's uniform? Asked Bouc. He is fact 3. Not so fast, my friend. We must first examine the evidence carefully. Hardman, the detective, spoke of this man. Should we believe him? I think we should, because his story, that was a bear hired by Rachel, could easily be disproved by a quick phone call to McNeil's in New York, and we have other evidence that his story is true from Helga's Sumet. Her descriptions of a man in the conductor's uniform matches Hardman's description exactly, and there is also the button found in Mrs. Herbert's compartment. So we have 3 separate pieces of evidence for this man with a high voice. Yes, my friend, said Bouc impatiently. We all agree that he exists. But where did he go? Perhaps he is 2 people. I mean, he is both himself. The small dark man fed by Rachel and the passenger on the train, looking so different that Rachel did not recognise him. But the men on the train are all tall, said Bouc, except the servant masterman, and he is unlikely to be a murderer. The man may actually be the woman, said Poirot. That explained the high voice. But it would not explain the wounds that did not bleed, said Mr. Constantine. We must not forget those. I have forgotten nothing, Doctor, but I have not yet found the solution that I am looking for. Perhaps the woman in the red dressing gown, seen by the several passengers, including me, is our second murderer. The one who made those wounds, Doctor, If we believe the female passengers, nobody has a red dressing gown. So, where is it now? And where is the conductor's uniform, with a missing button? Ah, cried Embok, jumping to his feet. We must search all the passengers' luggage. And Poet stood up too. I can guess where you found the uniform, he said. It will almost certainly be in the compartment of Helgard Cement. Hal began Embok, but he was interrupted by screams from the corridor. The door flew open and Mrs. Hubbard ran in. It's too horrible, she cried. In my sponge bag, a great knife, with blood all over it. Then she suddenly fell forwards and dropped heavily into the arms of Emborg. Emborg moved the woman to a chair, with her head on the table, and followed Poirot out of the door. Dr. Constantine called for the waiter. Keep her head like that, he said, then hurried after the other two. There was a crowd of people outside Mrs. Hubbard's compartment, waiting to see what the screams were about. Michael opened the door for the detective and his two friends. The knife is there, monsieur. I have not touched it. Hanging on the handle of the door into the next compartment was a large sponge bag. Below it, on the floor, was a sharp knife, covered in a dried blood. Poirot picked her up carefully. What do you think, Doctor? Did this knife kill Wetchet? Constantine's examinations did not take long. Yes, all the ruins on Wetchet's chest could be made with that knife. So, said Embok, the man passes through his compartment on his way to the corridor. He noticed the sponge bag and hides the knife inside it, not even realizing that he was woken Mrs. Hubbard. He quickly leaves. Yes, no doubt, said Poirot, but his mind was clearly on the other side of the matters. He was staring at the door, bolt 30 centimetres above the handle where a sponge bag was hanging. His thoughts were interrupted by the tearful return of Mrs. Hubbard. I'm not going to spend another night in this compartment, she said. I wouldn't sleep in here again if you paid me $1 million. Oh, if my daughter knew, Poirot said loudly, your luggage would be moved immediately, madam. Mrs. Hubbard, crying, stopped. Really, she said, then I feel better already. Poirot told Michael to move her luggage to compartment number 12. In the next carriage, the detective then showed her to the new compartment himself. She looked around happily. This is fine, she said, and it faces the other way, so it feels quite different from my old compartment. I still can't believe that there was a murderer in there. The bolt on the door still confused me, madam, said Poirot. You were in bed, so you couldn't see it. That's right. The sponge bag was there. Poirot picked up the sponge bag and hung it on the door handle. I see, he said. The bolt is just been underneath the handle, so it is hidden by the sponge bag. Exactly. But the Swedish lady said that it was bolted. She made a mistake, I suppose, said Poirot. Well, it was rather stupid of her, I think. Mrs. Hubbard began to worry about the delay to the train. I can't possibly get to my bite in time. This is just too terrible. And Poirot interrupted her before the tears returned. You have had a shock, madam. Perhaps we should get you a cup of tea. A coffee would be better, thank you. As the coffee was brought to Mr. Hubbard, Poirot asked for permission to search her luggage. She agreed readily, but nothing of interest was found. A search of Mr. Hardman's compartment was no more successful, but in Colonel Arbuthnot's luggage he discovered a pocket of pipe cleaners that were exactly the same as the one found at the crime scene. Poirot went next to the compartments of Count and Countess Andrea. As he entered, the Count was sitting near the door, reading a newspaper. His knife was curled up in a chair near the window. It appeared that she had been asleep. A quick search followed. Here is a label, all wet on your suitcase, madam, said Poirot, as he lifted down a blue bag. She did not reply, but stayed curled on her chair, showing no interest in the visitors. The next compartment was shared by Mary Debenham and Greta Olson. Poirot explained his purpose. After we have examined your luggage, Miss Holson, perhaps you could visit Mrs. Hubbard. We have moved her into the next carriage, but she is still very upset. It might help her to talk to someone. The kind Swede wanted to go and see Miss Hubbard immediately. She left her suitcase and unlocked in the compartment for Poirot's search. This was quickly done, and the detective turned to Mrs. Debenham. She would stare at him. Why did you send Miss Hudson away? She asked him. To help the American woman, he replied. A good excuse, but still an excuse. She smiled. He wanted to speak to me alone, didn't you? I do not plan as carefully as you think. Mrs. Debenham, please. I am not stupid for some reason. You have decided that I am responsible for this terrible crime. You are imagining things. No, I am not imagining things. Let's not waste time. Say what you want to say, as you wish. Mademoiselle, on the journey from Syria, we stopped at Aconia and went for a walk on the platform. I heard say to Colonel Arbuthnot, not now. When it's all over, when it's behind us. What do you mean by those words? She had said very quietly. Do you think I meant murder? I'm asking you what you meant. She sat silently for a minute, lost in thought. Then she said, those words had a meaning that I cannot tell you. Monsieur, I only can promise you that I never saw this man wretched in my life until I saw him on this train. You refuse to explain those words. I'm afraid there's something that I had to do. And now you have done it. What do you mean? There was a delay before we arrived in Istanbul. You were very upset. You who are always so calm. You lost that calm. I do not want to miss my connection, but Orient Express leave and still every day of a week. Missing the connection meant a delay of only 24 hours. Of this train, again, we have had a delay. A more serious delay. But this time your behaviour is very different. You are not impatient at all. You are quite calm. Mrs. Dunbarham's face was red. She was not smiling now. You do not answer, mademoiselle? I'm sorry. What do you want me to tell you? For the first time, she showed signs of losing her temper. Tell me why your behaviour is so different. I cannot tell you. There is nothing to explain. It does not matter, said Hercule Poirot. I will find out. He turned and left the compartment. In the next compartment, Hildegarde Smith was waiting for them. After looking through the luggage, Poirot turned to the Bouc. Do you remember what I said? Look here a moment. There was a brown conductor's uniform untidily placed inside the maid's suitcase. The maid suddenly looked frightened. That is not mine, she cried. I have not looked in that case since we left Istanbul. Poirot touched her arm gently and said, Do not worry. We believe you. The man in this uniform had hoped not to be seen. After he ran in the corridor, he needed to hide his uniform. He saw that the door to your compartment was open. So he quickly took off and threw it on the top of your suitcase. He held up the jacket. The button, the third down, was missing. In the pocket was the conductor's key. With that, he could lock and unlock any door in the carriage, cried Bouc. Now, we must find a dressing gown. A red dressing gown, said Poirot. The next compartment was Mr. McQueen's, and after that, Master Man's and the Italian's. Nothing of interest was found in the luggage, and there was no more compartments to search. What shall we do now? Asked Bouc. We have connected all the evidence that we can. We will go now to the restaurant carriage and think, but I will need cigarettes. I will meet you there in a few moments. Poirot returned to his own compartment to get cigarettes from his suitcase. As he opened the case, he sat down suddenly and stared. Placed tidily among his things was a red dressing gown with a Chinese picture on the back. Bouc and Dr. Constantine were talking together when Poirot entered the restaurant carriage. Well, said Bouc, this case makes no sense at all. I agree, said the doctor. Poirot lit a cigarette, but the evidence of passengers was very helpful. I thought it told us nothing, cried Bouc. What did I miss? Take young McQueen, for example. He told us that his employer, M. Wetcher, spake no languages except English. Last night, the conductor had heard someone in M. Wetcher's compartment call out, Celeste Ren, Jamais se trompe. That was not M. Wetcher. It is true, cried Constantine excitedly. This is why didn't want to accept the evidence of a watch. Those words came from a compartment at 23 minutes to 1. Redshirt was already dead, and it was his murderer. Speaking, finished Embok. You go too fast, my friends, said Poirot. We have no evidence that Redshirt was dead at that time. There was the cry that woke you. Yes, that is true. In one way, said Embok. This discovery does not change things very much. The murderer killed Redshirt half an hour earlier than we first thought. He stayed in a compartment for half an hour, changed the watch hands to 1:15, and left through Mrs. Hubbart's compartment. But imagine that you are a murderer, said Poirot. Wouldn't you change the watch to the time when your presence in Redshirt's compartment was impossible? You wouldn't move the hands to the net to accept time that you left the crime scene. True, said Dr. Constantine, a little confused. Perhaps it was a second murderer who changed the watch, said Embok. The woman in the red dressing gown. It was too dark for her to see that man was already dead, but she managed to find the watch in Redshirt's pyjama pocket and changed the time blindly, said Poirot in disbelief. Embok gave him a cold stare. And what is your explanation, my friend? At the moment, I have none that makes sense, replied Poirot, but it is time to close our eyes and think. One or more of the passengers killed Redshirt, which of them? For the quarter of an hour. No one spoke. Poirot appeared to be asleep. Then, suddenly, his eyes opened. He said to himself, but why not? If so, well, that would explain everything. He turned to the other men in the carriage and asked, have you had any useful thoughts? Thoughts, yes, but nothing very useful, said the doctor, and Bog agreed. I myself had thought of an explanation that would cover all the facts of a case. I am not yet sure that it is a correct one, but I will soon find out. Before that, let us discuss some points of interest. Firstly, an ink spot on a Hungarian passport. Embok looked at the passport of Countess Andrea. Is this a spot that you mean? He asked. Yes, it seems to be fresh ink. You notice where it is. At the beginning of the Countess' name. But what? Now, let us think back to the handkerchief. It is a very expensive thing, handmade in Paris. It has an H on it, but it is not something that unfashionable Mrs. Hubbard would buy, and it is certainly not a handkerchief of Hildegard. The lady's maid. There were only 2 women on the train who might own the handkerchief like this. They are Princess Dragon Mirov, whose first name is Natila, interrupted Embok, and a Countess Adriai. Now, I wonder about that ink spot. Perhaps it was just an accident, but perhaps it is hiding the letter. Perhaps the Countess' name is not Helena, but Helena, cried Embok. That is an idea. And there is something to support that idea too. One of the labels on the Countess' luggage was slightly wrecked. Perhaps there too a change to her name was made. I am starting to believe you, said Ambok, but the Countess Andrian, a murderer? It is so unlikely. Now, let us imagine, last night, without the snow on the line, what happens? Well, the murderer is discovered. As the train enters Italy, the man in conductor's uniform is seen earlier, just before 1 o'clock. We found the butter in Mrs. Hubbard's compartment and the uniform in the toilets. We read the threatening letters produced by the Queen. We decide that murderer got off the train at Bouc, where it stopped at 38. You mean? I mean that the murder was planned to seem like the work of someone from outside. Not a passenger, but the snow changed everything. It made it possible to believe that the murderer had got off the train. And where does the handkerchief fit in? Be patient, my friend. Now, we return to the burnt moor note, which include the words, D.C. Armstrong. The murderer did not want us to read that letter. Why not? There can be only one reason. Someone on this train must be very closely connected to the Armstrong family, and the note would make that person look guilty. I think that person is Countess Andrei, but what connection could she have with the Armstrongs? Cried Ambok. She says that she has never been to America. Yes, and she speaks only a little English, and she has a very foreign appearance. But this could all be an act. I am guessing that she is Linda Arden's younger daughter. Arden was not the actress's real name. Perhaps she was actually called Goldenberg. And the daughter met and married Count Andrei while he was working in Washington. But the princess says that she had married an Englishman. The Princess Dragonmoreth says that she cannot remember the name of the doctor's husband. Is that likely when the princess and the actress were such close friends? One of the waiters interrupted them. Excuse me, monsieur Bouc, but should we serve dinner now? And Bouc looked at Poirot. I think dinner would be most welcome, said the detective. At dinner? Poirot shared a table with Ambok and the doctor. The other passengers spoke little. Even Mrs. Hubbard. Poirot heard her say, I don't think I can eat. Then watch as she ate everything that was offered to her. Poirot had asked the waiter to serve the Count and Countess Andrei last. All of the other tables were empty when they finished the meal. As they stood up, Poirot stepped forward towards them. You have dropped your handkerchief, madam, he said, passing the Countess the small square of material. She looked at it quickly, then gave it back to him. You are mistaken, monsieur. That is not my handkerchief, but it has a letter H on it. The first letter of your name, she said calmly. My name is Eleanor. The first letter is E. I think not, said Poirot. Your name is Eleanor. Not Eleanor. Your Hannah Goldenberg, a sister of Mrs. Armstrong. There is complete silence for a minute or two. Both the Count and the Countess had gone white. Poirot said, more gently, you cannot deny it, we know. It is true, monsieur, said the Countess. Her voice had changed. It was, for the first time, American. Why did you not tell me this morning, madam? Why did you change the name on your passport? I changed the name. It was not my wife, said the Count. We heard that a handkerchief with an H on it had been discovered by the murdered man's body. Helena spoke in an emotional voice. The dead man murdered my niece, killed my sister, and caused the death of my sister's husband. The three people that I loved best in all the world. I had such good reason for killing him. Did you kill him, madam? I promise you that I did not, she said quietly. It is true, said the Count. Helena never left her compartment last night. He paused, then continued. Imagine my position, my empire. I did not want my wife, who I knew was innocent, to be taken to the police station, questioned, perhaps even judged guilty, and sent to prison. If I'm going to believe you, you must help me, said Poirot. Help you, repeated the Countess. Yes, the reason for the murder lies in the past, in the deaths of your sister and her family. Take me back into the past so that I can find the connection that explains everything. What can I tell you? They are all dead. All dead. Robert, Sonia, dear little Daisy. Susan, too. What nationality was she, madam? Poor surname. She was French. Her surname is terrible. I can't remember. We all just called her Susan. A pretty cheerful girl. She was so fond of Daisy. She helped a nurse to look after her. Who was a nurse? Stangelberg was her name. She loved Daisy. Yourself, you were a young girl at the time. Did you have a governess? Oh yes, a very frightening woman. She was English. No, Scottish. A big red-haired lady in her 40s. What was her name? Miss Freebody? And there was no one else living with you? Only servants? Now, madam, I want you to think carefully before you answer this question. Have you, since you were on this train, seen anyone that you recognised? She stared at him. No one. What about the Princess Drago Merov? Oh, I know her, of course. I thought you meant anyone from that time. I did, madam. Some years have passed. Remember, the person may look very different now. She thought for the moment. No, I am sure. There is no reason, no one. When the Count and Countess had left the carriage, Bouc cried, "Excellent work, my friend." I never for one moment. Imagine that Countess could be a murderer. So you feel sure that she is guilty? Asked Poirot. Yes, the handkerchief proves it, said Bouc confidently. Oh, I am not sure about the handkerchief. There is another person who could be his owner. Remember, He stopped suddenly as Princess Drago Merov entered the restaurant carriage. She walked towards Poirot and said, "I believe, monsieur, that you have a handkerchief of mine. Is this it, madam?" He showed her the one he found in Wretch's compartment. "That is it. It has the letter N in that corner for my name, Natilla. But, madam, it has a letter H, not N," said Bouc. She gave him a cold stare. "My handkerchiefs always have Russian letters on them. H is N in Russian." There is something about this old lady that made Bouc feel very foolish. "You did not tell us that this handkerchief was yours." "When we questioned you this morning," he said. "You did not ask me," said the princess. "Your next question, I suppose, will be, why was my handkerchief found by a murdered man's body? My reply to that is that I have no idea. Please excuse me, madam, but why would we believe you?" said Poirot. "You have already lied to us about Mrs. Armstrong's younger sister, and I would do that the same again. Her mother was my friend. I believe in loyalty to friends and to family, above or else. And in the case of the handkerchief, perhaps you are again lying to protect your friend's daughter. You think that the handkerchief is Hannah's?" She smiled coldly. "Well, it is easy to prove that it is mine. I will give you the address of the people in Paris who made it for me. Your maid, madam. Did she recognize this handkerchief when she showed it to her this morning?" "Probably. She saw it and said nothing." "Oh, well. Then she can be loyal." She stood up and walked out of the restaurant carriage. "But the princess could not be her murderer," said Dr. Constantine. "She doesn't have the strength to make the deepest wounds. Her arms are very weak, but smaller wounds. Yes, those could be her work, I suppose." And Bouc shook his head. "Lies and more lies. I cannot believe how many lies were told this morning." "There are many more lies to uncover," said Poirot cheerfully. "I just need to make some more lucky guesses." Colonel Arbuthnot was called again to the restaurant carriage. He came in, clearly annoyed, and said, "Well, firstly, I would like to show you a pipe cleaner." Poirot held it up. Is it one of yours?" "I don't know. I don't put the private mark on them." "You are the only passenger who smokes a pipe. This pipe cleaner was found by the body of a murdered man. Can you tell us, Colonel, how he got there?" Colonel Arbuthnot looked surprised. "I don't know," he said. I can only tell you that I didn't drop it there myself. Do you remember? Did you murder Mr. Ratchet?" "And I never even spoke to the man. If I was the murderer, I wouldn't tell you, would I?" "Oh, well, it doesn't matter." Again, the colonel looked surprised. "I really wanted to see you about something else," continued Poirot. "Mrs. Debenham has told you that I heard her talking to you on the platform at Cognac." Arbuthnot did not reply. She said, Not now. When it's all over. When is it? When it's behind us? Do you know what words those words meant. I must refuse to answer the question. You will not tell the lady's secrets exactly, even when that lady is likely to be guilty of murder. That is crazy. Mrs. Debenham is not a murderer. Mrs. Debenham was Armstrong's governess at the time that Daisy was kidnapped, said Poirot. There was a minute's silence. You'll see, we know more than you think, continued Poirot. If Mrs. Debenham is innocent, why did she say that she had never been to Malco? The Colonel coughed. Perhaps you are mistaken. No, I am not mistaken. Why did Mrs. Debenham lie to me? I suggest that you ask her. I still think that you are wrong. Poirot called to one of the waiters. Go and ask the English lady in the number 11 to come here, please. The four men sat in silence until Miss Debenham had entered the carriage. Her head was thrown back bravely. She looked very beautiful. Her eyes went to Arbuthnot for the moment. Just a moment. Then she said to Poirot, "You wish to see me? I wish to ask you, mademoiselle, why you told us that you had never been in America? We now know that you were living in Armstrong's house when Daisy was kidnapped." Her face changed for a second, then returned to its usual calm. The reason for my lie is easy to explain, she said with a smile. I have to work. Do you know how hard it is to get and keep the good job as a governess? If my name were connected with this crime, if my photograph were in the English newspaper, my reputation would be ruined. I would never work again. But if you were not guilty, there would be no problem. People remember names and faces. They did not remember who was guilty and who was innocent. It is always better to be honest, mademoiselle, and you also kept secret the fact that the Dutch Countess Adrienne is Mrs. Armstrong's youngest sister. Countess Andre really shook her head. It may seem unlikely, but I honestly do not recognize her. 3 years ago, when I last saw her, she was an American schoolgirl. She looks so different. It is true fact. When I saw her, her face looked familiar, but I couldn't think who she was. After that, I didn't really notice her. I had my own worries. You will not tell me your secret? Asked Poirot gently. She replied very quickly. I can't. Suddenly her face was in her hands, and she was crying. She seemed heartbroken. The Colonel jumped up and stood uncomfortably beside her. He shouted at Poirot, I'll break every bone in your body, monsieur, cried Umbock. Arbuthnot was now talking to the girl. Mary, please. She jumped up. It's nothing, she said. I'm fine. You don't need me any more. Do you, Poirot? If you do, please come and find me. Oh, what a fool I am making of myself. She hurried out of the carriage, followed by Arbuthnot. Well, my friend, smiled Umbock at Poirot. Another excellent guess. How do you do? Asked the Dr Christatine in admiration. This time it was easy. Countess Andre almost told me. What? When I asked her governor's name, she said, free body. You may not know, gentlemen. but there used to be a shop in London called Debenham and Freebody, with the name Debenham running through her head. Freebody was the first name that the Countess could think of. I understood immediately, of course. Nothing would surprise me now, said Embok, even if everybody on the train proved to be friends of the Armstrongs. It is certainly a most surprising case, said Dr. Constantine. Now, let us see your Italian, Embok, said Poirot. He asked. A waiter called Foscarelli to the restaurant carriage. The big Italian soon arrived, looking very nervous. What do you want? He asked. I have told you everything that I know. But now we want the true story, said Poirot. We already know it. But it will be a better for you if you tell us yourself. You sound like a American police, he said angrily. Be honest with us, they say, and the judges will be kind to you. Ah, you have experience of the New York police. No, never. They could not prove anything against me, although they tried hard enough. That was in the Armstrong case, wasn't it? Said Poirot quietly. You drive their cars for them. His eyes met Italian's. If you already know, why ask me? The Italian said. Why did you lie this morning? For the business reasons, and because I do not want to be questioned by the Yugoslav police. They hate Italians. They would just throw me in prison. Perhaps you deserve to be thrown in prison. No, I didn't murder that man. The long-faced Englishman can tell you that. Very good, said Poirot. You can go. That man was a pig, cried Foscarelli as he left the carriage. There were tears in his eyes. Little Daisy, what a lovely child. She loved to play in my car. All the servants thought she was wonderful. Next, Poirot called Greta Osm. She soon arrived in tears and fell back into the seat facing the detective. Do not upset yourself, mademoiselle, Poirot said gently. Why, you were a nurse who looked after the little Daisy Armstrong. Is this true? Carried the unhappy woman. Ah, she was a sweet, kind-hearted little girl. For the moment, she could not continue. I was wrong not to tell you this morning, but I was afraid. Afraid? I was so happy that an evil man was dead, that he could not kill any more little children. Poirot touched her gently on her shoulder. I understand everything. I will ask you no more questions. The Swedish lady moved slowly out of the carriage, her eyes blind with tears. As she reached the door, she walked into the man coming in. It was a manservant and a masterman. Excuse me, sir, he said to Poirot in his usual emotional voice. I thought I should tell you immediately. I work for Colonel Armstrong in the war, sir, and afterwards in New York. I'm sorry that I did not tell you earlier. He stopped. Poirot stared at him. Is that all you want to say? Yes, sir. He paused. Then, when Poirot did not speak, he turned and left the carriage. There is more unlikely than a murder. Mystery novel, cried Dr. Constantine. And Buck agreed. Of the 12 passengers, 9 have got a definite connection with the Armstrong case. Perhaps We can fit them in. We can fit them all into our little collection," said Poirot, smiling. "Maybe there are, I don't know, the Armstrongs, gardener, housekeeper, and cook." "That would be too much to believe," said Buck. "They're not all connected. They cannot all be connected." Poirot looked at him. "You do not understand," he said. "You do not understand at all." "Do you?" asked Buck. "Do you know who killed Rechet?" "Oh, yes," Poirot said. "I have known for some time." Poirot was silent for a minute. Then he said, Buck, could you please call everyone here? There are two possible solutions to his case. I want to explain them both to you all." The passengers crowded into the restaurant carriage and took their seats at a table. They all looked nervous. The conductor, Michael, asked Poirot if he could stay. "Of course, Michael," the detective replied. He stood up and gave a little cough. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to find out who murdered Samuel Edward Rechet, also known as Cassetti. There are two possible solutions to the crime. I will explain both solutions. Ask Buck and Dr. Constantine here to judge which is the right one. Mr. Rechet died last night between midnight and 2 in the morning. At half an hour after midnight, the train stopped because of thick snow. After that time, it was impossible for everyone to leave the train. Here's my first solution. An enemy of Mr. Rechet got into the train at Belgrade. He was wearing a conductor's uniform and had a conductor's key, with which he opened Rechet's locked door. He attacked Rechet with a knife and killed him. Then he went into Mrs. Hubbard's compartment. "That's true," said Mrs. Hubbard. He put his knife in Mrs. Hubbard's lunch bag without knowing it. He lost the button from his uniform. Then he went out into the corridor. He threw his uniform into a suitcase in an empty compartment and, dressed in ordinary clothes, left the train at Covesy through the door near the restaurant car. "But that explanation does not work," cried Buck. "What about the voice heard inside his compartment at 23 minutes to 1? That was not Rechet and not a murderer, but someone else. Perhaps someone had gone to speak to Rechet and find him dead. He rang the bell to tell the conductor, then, at the last minute, he changed his mind because he was afraid that people would think he was guilty of a crime." Princess Drago Melov was looking at Poirot strangely. "And the evidence of my maid, who saw the man in the uniform at 1:15, she asked. "How do you explain that?" "It is simple, madam. She recognized your handkerchief and invented her story to protect you." "You have thought of everything," said the princess. There was silence. Then everyone jumped as Miss Dr. Constantine suddenly hit the table with his hand. But no," he said. No, and again no. The explanations do not work for so many reasons. You must know that perfectly well, Poirot. Then I must give my second solution," said the detective. "But do not forget this first one too quickly. You may agree with later." Poirot looked around the carriage before continuing. It was immediately clear to me that many of you were lying. To protect someone, Mr. Hodman, you should spend a night in the person's compartment or in a place where you can see his door. Your method was completely useless, except for producing evidence that no one in any other part of the train could be Richard's murderer. Then they were Mrs. Debenham and Colonel Harbuthnot on the platform, and Conyers, he called her Mary. A man like the Colonel does not use the woman's first name when he has only just met her. Clearly, they were lying about their relationship. Mrs. Hubbard also made a mistake. She said that her sponge bag was hanging on the handle of the door to Wedge's compartment, and that they hid the bolt on the door. That would be possible in compartments 2, 4, and 12, for example. All the even numbers, because the bolt is just under the door handle. But in her compartment, number 3, the bolt is a long way above the door handle, and so it could not be hidden by the hanging sponge bag. Mrs. Hubbard had clearly invented that story. The watch in Miss Wedge's pyjamas was interesting too. What an uncomfortable place to keep a watch. I was sure that it was a false clue. So it was Wedge murdered earlier, when the cry came from his room. I think not. He was so heavily drugged that he could not defend himself. He could not cry out either, I believe. I believe that the cry at the 23 minutes to 1, and a words in French, where it planned to confuse me. McQueen told me that Reggie spoke no French. I was meant to think that Reggie was killed at that moment. At the real time of the crime, I think Reggie was killed at almost 2 o'clock, and the murderer, he paused, looking at the passengers. There was complete silence. He looked slowly. Everyone was proved innocent by another passenger. In most cases, the passenger who was unlikely to be a friend in the earlier life. McQueen and Arbuthnot, the English manservant, and the Italian, the Swedish lady, and the English governors. That is very strange. I said to myself, they cannot all be guilty. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I realised they are all guilty. It was impossible that so many people connected with could only happen if it was planned. That would also explain the crowded train at a time of the year that is usually quiet. There were 12 passengers after Reggie's death. There were 12 knife wounds in Reggie's chest, body. In America, the murder cases are decided by the group of 12 ordinary people. Reggie had escaped punishment from a court in America, although no one doubted that he was guilty. I imagined a group of 12 people who decided, when the court case failed, to give him his punishment another way, and immediately the whole case became clear to me. Everything was explained. There were strange wounds that did not bleed, the false threatening letters that were written only to be produced as the evidence, the description of the document was a high voice that fitted none of the real conductors and could equally mean a man or a woman. I believe that everyone entered the wretched compartment for Mrs. Hubbart's and struck. No one can know which strike actually killed him. Every detail of the evidence was very carefully planned. The only possible solution appeared to be a murderer who joined to the train and left again during the night. But then there was the snow, the first first piece of bad luck. I imagine there was a quite quick discussion, and everyone decided to continue with the crime. It would be clear that the murderer had to be a one or more of the passengers, but they were still protected by each other's stories. Then they added some extra clues to confuse the case. A pipe cleaner, a lady's handkerchief, the woman in the red dressing gown. The dressing gown was probably Countess Andrea's, as there is no dressing gown in her luggage. McQueen learnt that we had seen the word Armstrong's old on the burnt letter, and told the others it was their second piece of bad luck. The position of Countess Andrea became worrying, and the Count changed her name on the passport. The plan was impossible without the help of Michael, the conductor, but if he was a one of a group. Then there were 13 people, not 12. I believe that the Countess who had strongest reason to kill Christie was probably the one who did not do it. Her husband has promised me that she did not leave her compartment. I believe him. But why was honest Michael in this? He was a good man who had worked on the train for many years. Then I remember Susan, those Armstrong's French maid. Perhaps the unlucky girl was Michael's daughter, and the others, Abertha was probably an army friend of Armstrong's. Hilgard, Smith, the family's cook. Hardman probably worked as a detective for the case, or perhaps he had been in love with Susan. Then there was Mrs. Hubbard. She had a difficult job, because she was in the compartment for which everyone reached. But yet, no one can say that there were with her. To play the part of this foolish old woman, a true actress was needed. Mrs. Armstrong's mother, Linda Harden, he stopped. Then, in a soft, rich, dreamy voice, very unlike the one she had used on the journey, Mrs. Hubbard said, "I've always liked playing amusing characters. That mistake with a sponge bag was silly. Why, we tried it on the journey east, but I was in an even numbered compartment then, I suppose." She moved slightly. I looked straight at Poirot. "You have guessed so much, and Poirot, but even you can't imagine what it was like that terrible day in New York, when Hector McQueen told us that Christie had worked free from a court. I was crazy with sadness and anger, and the servants were too. Colonel Arbuthnot was there. He was Robert Armstrong's best friend. He saved my life in the war, and said Arbuthnot. He decided then and begged to give him a punishment that a court had failed to give him. Death. Perhaps we were mad, I don't know. There were 12 of us. Well, 11, because Susan's father was in France, of course. Mary explained all the details with Hector. It took a long time to perfect a plan. Hardman managed to find Retcher, then Masterman and Hector had to get jobs with him. We had a meeting with Susan's father for Colonel Arbuthnot. It was important that there was 12 of us. It made it more correct, he thought. There was willing Michael was willing. We knew that Red Ship would come back from the east on Orient Express, so this seemed a perfect opportunity. We tried to book every compartment in the carriage, but unfortunately, one he had been booked long before for someone from a train company. He smiled at Ambok. Mr. Harris, of course, was invented. We didn't want a stranger in his actor's compartment. Then, at the last minute, you came, and Poirot. She stopped. Well, she said, you know everything now, but what are you going to do about it? If someone must be punished, can you blame me, and only me, for the crime? It's not necessary to bring the trouble to all these other good people. Poor Michael and Mary and Colonel Arbuthnot. They loved each other so much. Poirot looked at his friend. Why, what do you say, Ambok? Ambok coughed and said, in my opinion, the first solution was a correct one. Definitely. The murderer left the train at Vancouver. I suggest that we give that solution to the Yugoslav police when they arrived. Do you agree, Doctor? Certainly I agree, said Dr. Constantine. I think I made some rather silly suggestions about the medieval medical evidence. Then, said Poirot, we have solved the case. My work here is done. Friends, to conclude this story of Murder on the Orient Express, what do you think of the character, a famous Belgian detective, Hercule Poirot, who is a very clever policeman, who can ever solve the case, whoever murder, Mr. Machet or Cassidy, who has been murdered. It seems like you found the story very interesting about the crimes and mysteries. Also can suggest, Hercule Poirot, he can find solutions who's guilty or innocent. It's now finally concluded, so we have now finished first 8 chapters. I hope you enjoyed so far, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you, so remember guys, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification, and don't miss out my future content. This is really important. You can support me on my social media platforms. You can check out my behind the scenes and exclusive contents. Also, alternatively, you can watch some YouTube shorts as behind the scenes as well. Whereas you can support me on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest and TikTok. You can always welcome to support me and to keep my creativity developed and keep my YouTube growing, fully enhanced. See you soon guys, and thank you for stopping by.